coming here for the presentation and the conversation later. And let me introduce Tanya to you. Pardon me. So Tanya Khanna here is the founder and director of Epistle Communications. She's an architect with over a decade of global experience in corporate communications and strategy within architecture, design, real estate, and media domain. She has helped design practices garner worldwide media attention for key projects, aid new business acquisition, win awards, and improve internal practices for sustained development. Bringing together technical know-how, innovative insight, and a pragmatic approach founded on industry experience, Tanya offers strategic communications expertise in line with business aspirations through Epistle Communications, which is the firm that she has founded. She is also a Greha certified evaluator. She ascertains her commitment towards endorsement of sustainable design expertise and writes for several trade and non-trade journals and has been a part of various juries in colleges. So I think by that I'm going to hand over to Tanya and we'll have a conversation later on after her presentation. Thank you.
So I think the theme of my talk is reading architecture, of course, for the society. And perception is a very important part of our daily life. How we read the objects around us is what affects, how we think. And whether it is art, how do we recognize it? Popular cars, how we distinguish them. And of course, landmark architecture, how do we perceive it? We rely on our perception to shape our worldview, and which is further shaped by people who seek to influence us for profit, essentially. Whether it is advertisements for cars, explanations about art, mythologies around food, and other marketing tools, they all shape our understanding of what is good, what's bad and ugly, of course, and how much we ought to pay attention to something. However, a large part of our experiential framework is shaped by our built environment. Victor Hugo says, "The city is a writing, and we, the users of the city, are the readers." However, the stuff that we read does not really care about the built environment. The newspapers are full of everything but architecture or buildings or real estate. Design is just far, far away. I mean, there is fashion design, of course, but anything to do with the built environment, maybe the HT estate or the real estate sections of newspaper cover a little bit about how much money developers are making or which is the latest housing project. Most often they do not talk about the content, the real content of all this work. Newspaper images typically showcase the banalities of life and most often don't give much. And architecture, within the close confines of design media, is almost never read outside the profession. We rarely ever pause to reflect and think about why a certain building is made in a certain way, because it's never sold to us. We are in fact never told why buildings are even important in our life, unless when we are told to observe. Taj Mahal dekh lo. Look, the Airtel building. In the daily rut of life, we never really pause to read the architecture around us. Unfortunately, not all architecture is by star architects or the so-called master architects. Therefore, it is not packaged and sold to us as wow architecture. Within this context, Indian architecture is seldom noticed or even understood, forget being talked about. We keep complaining about the state of architecture and the pitiful state of our built environment, and as professionals, we don't even engage in discourse with the society. Who has the time to write? Who has the time to talk? As architects, we don't want to write. We only draw, we only build. In fact, who has the time to even come to listen to an architect talk about architecture at the Habitat Center? We don't realize that city building is critical, and it is architects like you and me who shape our built environment. As architects, It is important that we write our own history rather than allow a handful of icon makers usurp the architectural agenda, reducing city building to a second-rate activity, whereas in fact it is the greatest responsibility of our age. 50% of the world's population today lives in cities, and this number is only going to increase over time. We are far away from talking about quality architecture. But it is this generic architecture, the spaces, the cities that we inhabit, that we must celebrate. We must celebrate our cities. And this, of course, therefore, needs to be conveyed, communicated, and curated for the common man, not just for the profession, but for society at large. Those engaging in making the places that we actually inhabit, almost 99% of the time, don't ever talk about their work. And as a result, they don't get talked about. Their contribution is unseen and therefore considered unimportant. It does not form a part of daily conversations. Like any successful person at the top of the game, star architects rarely ever need to explain their buildings. Critics are the ones who line up to visit their buildings, or websites will talk about it, and all that content comes from them, from these architects themselves. But spaces that are around us are not being talked about.